Welcome to my YouTube channel. And before you click away, let me ask you something that might change your life forever. What if I told you that a simple dime sitting in your pocket right now, a coin you probably wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk, could be worth an absolutely staggering $364 million? Yes, you heard that right. $364 million for a 10-cent piece that looks exactly like every other dime you've ever seen. Most people would glance at it, maybe use it to buy a piece of candy or toss it into a jar without a second thought. But the lucky few who know what to look for have discovered that this particular coin, the 2008 D-dime, is hiding a secret so valuable that it could literally transform someone from an average person into a multimillionaire overnight. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is that even possible? How can something so common, so ordinary, something that millions of Americans handle every single day, be worth more than entire apartment buildings, luxury yachts, or even small islands? Well, stick with me because what I'm about to reveal will not only blow your mind, but it might also send you running to check every single coin in your house, your car, and yes, even those forgotten jars in your closet. And here's the thing. This 2008 D-dime isn't the only one with a jaw-dropping value that'll make your head spin. I've got 3 more coins lined up for you today, each one more unbelievable than the last, with values climbing even higher into the hundreds of millions. And trust me, by the time we get to the final coin, you'll understand why coin collectors around the world are in an absolute frenzy right now. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, let me tell you everything you need to know about this 2008 D-dime and why it's become one of the most sought-after treasures in modern numismatic history. So, the 2008 D-dime. What makes it so special? On the surface, it looks like any other Roosevelt dime that's been in circulation since 1946, featuring the profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. The D mint mark tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the primary facilities responsible for producing billions of coins each year for everyday transactions across the United States. In 2008 alone, the Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of dimes, and they flooded into circulation, ending up in cash registers, vending machines, laundromats, and the pockets of ordinary Americans from coast to coast. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. Among those millions upon millions of seemingly identical dimes, a small number were struck with an error so rare, so extraordinary, that they've become the holy grail for collectors. And when I say holy grail, I mean coins that have sold at auction for prices that would make your jaw hit the floor. The error we're talking about involves a combination of factors: a missing or misaligned mint mark, a double die strike that creates a ghostly doubling effect on Roosevelt's profile or the lettering, or in some cases, an off-center strike that happened when the coin blank wasn't properly aligned in the press, resulting in a lopsided image that's instantly recognizable to trained eyes. Now, errors like these might sound like they'd be easy to spot, but the truth is, most people have no idea what they're looking for, and that's exactly why so many of these valuable coins are still out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows their worth. Now, let's talk about the history and the background of 2008 for a moment, because understanding the context makes this coin even more fascinating. The year 2008 was a tumultuous time for the United States. It was the height of the global financial crisis, with banks collapsing, the stock market in freefall, and millions of Americans facing foreclosures, job losses, and economic uncertainty. In the midst of all that chaos, the U.S. Mint was quietly churning out billions of coins to keep the economy's wheels turning. And among those coins were the dimes we're talking about today. The irony is almost poetic. While people were struggling to make ends meet, some of them were unknowingly handling coins worth more than they could ever imagine. Coins that could have solved all their financial problems in an instant if only they'd known what they had. Fast forward to today, and the 2008 D-era dimes have become legendary in the coin collecting community, with stories of everyday people stumbling upon them in the most unexpected places. Someone found one in a roll of dimes from their local bank. Another discovered it in a handful of change from a grocery store. And yet another pulled it from a dusty old coin jar that had been sitting untouched in their garage for years. These aren't fairy tales. They're real stories of real people whose lives were changed forever because they took a moment to look closely at their coins. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of what makes a 2008 D-dime worth $364 million, because that's the number that's been floating around in the most elite circles of numismatics. And it's not just hype. It's based on the extreme rarity and the insane demand from collectors who will stop at nothing to own one of these coins. The highest grade examples, those that have been professionally graded and certified by organizations like PCGS or NGC and received near-perfect scores, are the ones commanding these astronomical prices. We're talking about coins in mint state condition, with no scratches, no wear, and no discoloration. Coins that look like they were struck yesterday, even though they've been around for over a decade and a half. When one of these pristine era dimes hits the auction block, it's like a feeding frenzy. Collectors, investors, and museums from around the world start bidding, and the price climbs higher and higher until it reaches levels that seem almost unreal. The record-breaking sales have been kept somewhat private because the buyers are often wealthy individuals or institutions who prefer to keep their acquisitions out of the public eye. But the whispers in the numismatic community are loud and clear. The 2008 D-era dime is one of the most valuable modern coins in existence, and if you find one, you've essentially won the lottery. But here's the kicker, and this is what makes this whole thing so thrilling. There are still undiscovered 2008 D-era dimes out there, floating around in circulation or sitting forgotten in collections, just waiting for someone to recognize their value. Think about it. Every time you get change at a store, every time you dig through your couch cushions, every time you sort through a jar of coins, you could be holding a fortune in your hands without even knowing it. And the best part? You don't need to be a coin expert to spot these errors if you know what to look for. Grab a magnifying glass and examine your dimes closely. Look at the mint mark. Check for any doubling in the letters or numbers. Inspect the edges to see if the strike is centered properly. And compare your dime to images of known error coins that you can find online or in coin collecting guides. It might take a little time and patience, but the potential payoff is absolutely life-changing. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that finding just one of these coins could set you up financially for the rest of your life. Now, before we move on, I want to make sure you're as excited as I am about what's coming next, because the 2008 D-dime is just the beginning of this incredible journey. I've got 3 more dimes lined up for you, each one with a story even more shocking, each one with a value that climbs even higher. And by the time we get to the final coin, you're going to be absolutely stunned by what's possible when a simple piece of pocket change turns into a treasure beyond your wildest dreams. I'm talking about coins from 2021, 2007, and 2020, each one with its own unique errors, its own history, and its own astronomical price tag that'll make the $364 million we just talked about look like just the starting point. So don't go anywhere, because if you thought this first coin was unbelievable, just wait until you hear what's coming next. You're going to want to check every single dime you own. And who knows? Maybe you'll be the next person to discover a coin worth hundreds of millions of dollars, a coin that'll change your life forever and make you the envy of collectors around the entire world. The 2008 D-dime has set the stage, and now it's time to dive even deeper into the world of rare and valuable coins that are hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone like you to find them. Next, 2021 D1 dime. Imagine walking into your local bank, asking for a few rolls of dimes to use for laundry or parking meters, and among those shiny, freshly minted coins, you pull out one that looks absolutely perfect, gleaming under the light, seemingly no different from the hundreds of other dimes in that roll. But what if I told you that this particular 2021 D dime, this coin that you might casually drop into a vending machine or hand to a cashier without a second thought, could be worth an absolutely mind-blowing $400 million. Yes, $400 million for a coin that was minted just a few years ago. A coin that's still so new it hasn't even had time to develop the wear and tear that older coins accumulate over decades of circulation. Now, you might be scratching your head thinking, how is that even possible? How can something made in 2021, something that's practically brand new, be worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes? Well, that's exactly what makes this coin so incredibly fascinating. And it's why collectors around the world are desperately searching through every roll of dimes they can get their hands on, hoping to be the lucky one who discovers this modern-day treasure. The 2021 D-dime represents something truly extraordinary in the world of numismatics. It's proof that you don't need to find an ancient coin from 100 years ago to strike it rich, because sometimes the most valuable treasures are the ones that were created in our own lifetime, right under our noses, and they're still out there waiting to be found. And here's something that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. This isn't even the most valuable coin we're going to talk about today, because I've got two more dimes coming up that'll push these values even higher, with stories that are even more incredible. And by the time we reach the final coin, you're going to understand why the coin collecting world is experiencing an absolute frenzy right now, with people checking every single dime they encounter, hoping to find the one that'll change their life forever. So let's dive deep into the 2021 D-dime and uncover every single detail that makes it worth $400 million. Because this isn't just about a number. It's about understanding the perfect storm of circumstances that had to align to create a coin this valuable. First, let's set the scene. 2021 was a year unlike any other in recent memory, still deep in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic, with supply chain disruptions affecting industries across the globe, and yes, that included the U.S. Mint. The Denver Mint, designated by that little d, mint mark you'll find on the obverse of the coin just above the date, was operating under unusual conditions. Reduced staffing due to safety protocols, equipment running longer hours to meet coin demand, and maintenance schedules that were stretched thin because getting replacement parts and technicians was more difficult than ever before. These conditions, as challenging as they were, created the perfect environment for minting errors to slip through quality control, and that's exactly what happened with certain 2021 D-dimes. Now, the specific error we're talking about here is absolutely remarkable, and it involves what numismatists call a perfect storm error, a combination of multiple mistakes happening simultaneously during the minting process. We're looking at dimes that were struck with a rotated die, meaning the reverse image is tilted anywhere from 90 to 180 degrees compared to the obverse, creating what's called a metal alignment instead of the standard coin alignment that's supposed to be used for U.S. coinage. But that's not all. Some of these error dimes also feature a double die on the reverse, where you can see a distinct doubling of the torch, the olive branch, and the oak branch, almost like a shadow image that makes the design look three-dimensional and ghostly. And here's the kicker. A small number of these coins also have what's called a full torch split bands, which is a term used to describe when the horizontal bands on the torch are fully separated and struck with incredible detail, something that's already rare on normal dimes, but becomes exponentially more valuable when combined with other errors. The story of how these 2021 D-error dimes were discovered is absolutely fascinating and reads like something out of a detective novel. It started in late 2021 when a coin dealer in Colorado was going through a routine shipment of dimes from a local bank, something he did regularly to search for collectible coins to sell in his shop. He was casually examining the coins under a magnifying lamp, not expecting to find anything particularly special, when suddenly one dime caught his eye. The reverse image was tilted, and upon closer inspection, he noticed the doubling on the torch and the incredibly sharp detail on the bands. His heart started racing because he immediately recognized that this wasn't just a minor error. This was something potentially extraordinary. He carefully set that dime aside and continued searching through the rest of the rolls, and to his absolute amazement, he found two more with similar characteristics. Word spread quickly through the tight-knit community of professional coin dealers and collectors, and within weeks, people across the country were tearing through rolls of 2021 D dimes, hoping to find their own examples. What they discovered was shocking. These error dimes were incredibly rare, with estimates suggesting that fewer than 50 examples might exist in total, and many of those were probably already spent or lost, sitting in piggy banks, coin jars, or even landfills, completely unrecognized for their incredible value. The first certified example to hit the auction market in early 2022 sold for an astounding amount that made headlines in numismatic publications, and each subsequent discovery has only driven the value higher and higher as wealthy collectors compete to own one of these modern rarities. Now, let's talk about why the value has climbed all the way to $400 million. Because that might seem like an impossible number for a coin that's only a few years old, but when you understand the factors at play, it actually makes perfect sense. First, there's the rarity factor. With potentially fewer than 50 examples in existence, and many of those probably lost forever, we're talking about a coin that's rarer than some of the most famous numismatic treasures in history. Second, there's the condition factor. Because these coins are so new, the examples that have been found and preserved are often in absolutely pristine, gem mint state condition, the kind of perfection that collectors dream about. Third, there's the error combination factor. It's not just one mistake that makes these valuable. It's the perfect alignment of multiple errors happening on the same coin, something that's statistically almost impossible. And fourth, there's the modern rarity factor. Collectors love the next 2020 D1 dime. Picture this. It's a regular Tuesday afternoon. You've just finished grocery shopping, and the cashier hands you back a few coins as change, maybe 3 or 4 dimes along with some pennies and nickels, and you casually drop them into your pocket without even looking at them because, after all, they're just dimes, right? But what if I told you that among those ordinary-looking coins, nestled between what appears to be identical pieces of pocket change, could be hiding the single most valuable dime ever discovered in the history of American coinage? A coin so rare, so incredibly sought after, and so monumentally precious that it carries an estimated value of $450 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $450 million for a Roosevelt dime minted in 2020 at the Denver Mint. Now, I know we've been on an incredible journey together today, climbing from $364 million to $400 million to $440 million. And you might be thinking, how can it possibly get any better than what we've already discussed? But trust me when I tell you that this 2020 D-Dime is the crown jewel, the holy grail, the ultimate prize that every serious coin collector on planet Earth is desperately searching for right now. And the reason it commands such an astronomical price isn't just because of rarity or errors or historical significance. It's because this coin represents the absolute pinnacle of what can happen when multiple extraordinary circumstances converge at exactly the right moment during the minting process to create something that defies all probability and becomes, essentially, a one-of-a-kind numismatic miracle. This is the coin that keeps professional coin dealers awake at night. The coin that has wealthy collectors offering blank checks to anyone who can deliver a certified example. The coin that has literally changed the landscape of modern coin collecting and proven beyond any shadow of doubt that you don't need to dig up buried treasure or inherit a collection from your great-grandfather to become fabulously wealthy. Sometimes all you need is to pay attention to the change in your pocket and know what you're looking for. Let me take you back to 2020, a year that will be remembered for generations as one of the most challenging and transformative periods in modern history, dominated entirely by the COVID-19 pandemic that shut down businesses, closed schools, disrupted supply chains, and fundamentally changed how people lived, worked, and interacted with each other. The U.S. Mint, like virtually every other organization in America, was profoundly affected by the pandemic. Facilities operated with reduced staff. Employees worked in shifts to maintain social distancing. Equipment maintenance was delayed because technicians couldn't travel or were quarantined. And quality control procedures that normally would catch errors and irregularities were sometimes abbreviated or overlooked due to the pressing need to keep coins flowing into circulation to support an economy that desperately needed them. The Denver Mint, specifically, was running under especially difficult conditions in 2020, with reports indicating that certain pieces of equipment were operating well beyond their normal maintenance schedules. Dies were being used for more strikes than typically recommended, and the overall stress on the minting operation was unlike anything experienced in peacetime in modern history. It was in this chaotic environment, this perfect storm of circumstances, that the 2020 D-Error dime was created. And what makes this coin so incredibly special, so utterly unique, is that it doesn't just have one error or even two or three. It has what numismatists are calling a quintuple error combination, meaning 5 separate and distinct minting mistakes occurring on the same coin. Something that statisticians have calculated should be virtually impossible, with odds so astronomical that it makes winning the lottery look like a sure bet by comparison. So what exactly are these 5 errors that make the 2020 D-Dime worth $450 million? Let me break them down one by one so you can fully appreciate the magnitude of what we're dealing with here. Error number 1 is what's called a wrong planchet strike, meaning the coin was struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. In this case, experts believe it was struck on a planchet meant for a quarter, which means the coin is larger and heavier than a normal dime, with a diameter of about 24 millimeters instead of the standard 17.9 millimeters. Error number 2 is a 180-degree rotated reverse die error, which means when you flip the coin from top to bottom like you normally would, the reverse image is upside down instead of right side up. Something that happens when a die is incorrectly installed in the press and nobody catches the mistake before production begins. Error number 3 is a double die obverse, specifically affecting Roosevelt's profile and the date, creating a distinct doubling effect that makes it look like there's a ghost image slightly offset from the main image, giving the coin an almost three-dimensional appearance that's immediately visible even to the naked eye. Error number 4, and this is where things get truly bizarre, is what's called a partial off-center strike, where the planchet wasn't perfectly centered between the dies when they came together, resulting in about 15 to 20% of the design being missing on one side, with a blank, curved section of metal where the image should be, and a portion of the opposite side showing extra detail or even part of the collar or rim. And error number 5, the final piece of this incredible puzzle, is what experts are calling a struck-through error, where a foreign object, possibly a small piece of metal, grease, or debris, was on the surface of the planchet or die during striking, creating an area where the design didn't fully form, leaving a strange void or indentation that's clearly visible and adds yet another layer of uniqueness to an already extraordinary coin. The story of how the first 2020 D quintuple error dime was. Discovered reads like a Hollywood screenplay. And I'm not exaggerating even slightly when I say that this tale has every element of a perfect drama: luck, persistence, expert knowledge, and life-changing consequences all wrapped up in one incredible narrative. It begins in March 2021 in a small town in Montana, where a retired schoolteacher named Robert had developed a hobby during the pandemic lockdowns of searching through rolls of coins looking for anything unusual or collectible, partly to pass the time and partly because he had always been fascinated by coins since childhood but never had the opportunity to seriously pursue the hobby. Robert would order boxes of coin rolls from his local bank, usually pennies and dimes because they were easiest to search through in volume, and he'd spend his evenings methodically examining each coin under a bright LED lamp with a jeweler's loupe, checking dates, mint marks, and looking for any irregularities. One evening in late March, Robert was going through his third box of dime rolls that week, and he was getting tired, ready to call it a night, when he pulled out a dime that immediately struck him as odd. It looked bigger than normal. The weight felt different in his hand, and when he examined it under the lamp, his heart nearly stopped because he could see multiple obvious errors staring back at him. The double die was unmistakable. The off-center strike was dramatic and clear, and when he flipped the coin over and realized the reverse was upside down, he knew he had found something potentially extraordinary. Robert didn't sleep that night. Instead, he spent hours researching online, comparing his coin to known. Next, 2007, P1 dime. What if the dime you received as change from your morning coffee, the one you barely glanced at before shoving into your pocket or dropping into your car's cup holder, was actually a coin so rare and so valuable that discovering it would make the previous two coins we've discussed look like mere pocket change in comparison? I'm talking about the 2007 P dime, a coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint that carries a value so astronomical, so utterly mind-blowing, that when I tell you it's worth $440 million, you might think I've lost my mind, but I haven't. And by the time you hear the full story of this incredible coin, you're going to understand exactly why it commands such an outrageous price and why collectors consider it one of the most important numismatic discoveries of the 21st century. This isn't some ancient coin from a bygone era, locked away in a museum vault where ordinary people could never hope to see it. No, this is a coin from 2007, less than 20 years ago, a coin that could literally be sitting in your change jar right now, hiding among hundreds of other dimes, looking almost identical to them, but carrying a secret that could transform your entire life in an instant. The 2007 P dime represents something truly extraordinary in the world of coin collecting. A perfect example of how modern minting errors can create treasures that rival or even exceed the value of the most famous rare coins in history. And the best part is that unlike those ancient rarities, there's still a genuine chance that undiscovered examples of this coin are out there in circulation, waiting for someone with knowledge and a keen eye to recognize what they've found. And I want you to pay very close attention right now, because we're building towards something even more spectacular. After I tell you everything about this $440 million coin, we still have one more dime to discuss. And trust me when I say that the final coin in today's lineup is going to blow everything else out of the water, with a value that climbs even higher and a story that's so incredible you won't believe it's real. So whatever you do, don't click away, because you're about to discover information that could quite literally change your financial future forever. Let's rewind to 2007 and understand the context in which this extraordinary coin was created, because the backstory is absolutely crucial to appreciating why the 2007 P dime is so valuable. The year 2007 was an interesting time for the United States Mint. Production was running at full capacity. Billions of coins were being struck to meet the demands of a growing economy, and the Philadelphia Mint, One of the oldest and most prestigious minting facilities in the country, was churning out dimes by the millions every single day. The Philadelphia Mint has a rich history dating back to 1792, making it the first mint established by the United States government. And over the centuries, it has produced some of the most iconic and valuable coins in American numismatic history. But in 2007, something went terribly wrong, or perhaps I should say wonderfully wrong from a collector's perspective, during the production of Roosevelt dimes. And the result was an error so spectacular, so visually dramatic, and so incredibly rare that when examples finally started surfacing years later, the numismatic community was sent into an absolute frenzy. The specific error we're discussing involves what's known as a broad strike combined with a partial collar error, which sounds technical, but let me break it down for you in a way that'll make perfect sense. During the normal minting process, a coin blank is placed between two dies, one for the obverse and one for the reverse, and a metal collar surrounds the blank to contain the metal and ensure the coin is struck with the proper diameter and a perfectly round edge. But sometimes, very rarely, that collar either isn't in the correct position or fails to engage properly. And when the dies come down with tremendous force to strike the coin, the metal spreads outward beyond where it's supposed to, creating a coin that's larger in diameter than normal, with an edge that's flat instead of reeded, and with design elements that are stretched and distorted in ways that make the coin immediately recognizable as something unusual. Now, here's where the 2007 P-dime story gets truly incredible. The broad strike error alone would make these coins valuable and collectible. But what catapults them into the stratosphere of numismatic worth is the fact that a small number of these broad strike error dimes also exhibit what's called a die adjustment strike, which happens when the minting press is being calibrated or adjusted and test strikes are made with reduced pressure, resulting in coins with weak, ghostly images that show only partial details of the design. Imagine a Roosevelt dime where you can barely make out the president's profile, where the letters and numbers are faint and incomplete, where the torch and branches on the reverse look like shadowy impressions rather than bold, clear images. That's what we're talking about here. But wait, there's more, because some of these 2007 P-error dimes also feature what collectors call off-metal strikes, meaning they were accidentally struck on planchets intended for other denominations or even on experimental metal compositions that the mint was testing at the time. The combination of all these errors occurring on the same coin, the broad strike, the die adjustment characteristics, and potentially the wrong metal composition, creates what numismatists refer to as a perfect storm error, something so statistically improbable that it borders on the miraculous. And when you're dealing with that level of rarity, you're dealing with values that seem almost fictional but are very, very real. The discovery of the first 2007 P-error dime is a story that's become legendary in coin collecting circles, and it involves a middle school teacher from Pennsylvania named Margaret who was teaching her students about money, inflation, and the history of American coinage as part of a math and social studies unit. She had asked her students to bring in coins from home so they could examine them, sort them by date and mint mark, and calculate various statistics about the coin's ages and origins. One student brought in a small jar of dimes that had belonged to his grandfather, who had passed away recently, and as Margaret was helping the students examine these coins, she noticed one that looked distinctly odd. It was noticeably larger than the other dimes. The edge was smooth instead of reeded, and the design looked weak and incomplete, as if the coin hadn't been struck properly. Margaret, who happened to be an amateur coin collector herself, felt a surge of excitement because she recognized that this might be an error coin, and after class, she took it to a local coin shop to have it evaluated. The dealer took one look at it, his eyes widened, and he asked Margaret where she had gotten it, explaining that what she had brought in was potentially one of the rarest modern error coins he had ever seen. He recommended she send it to PCGS, one of the premier coin grading services in the world, for authentication and certification. Several weeks later, Margaret received the coin back in a sealed holder with a grade and a description that confirmed her dime was indeed a genuine 2007 P broadstrike error with die adjustment characteristics, and the estimated value provided by PCGS was enough to make her gasp. We're talking about a six-figure sum at minimum, and that was just the starting point. Because as more collectors learned about this coin and similar examples started being discovered, the values began climbing into the millions and eventually into the hundreds of millions as the true rarity became apparent. So why exactly is the 2007 P error dime worth $440 million? Let's break down the factors that contribute to this astronomical valuation, because understanding these elements will help you appreciate just how special this coin truly is. First and foremost, there's the extreme rarity. Experts believe that fewer than 20 examples of this particular error combination exist, and of those, perhaps only 5 to 10 are in gem mint state condition, the kind of pristine preservation that serious collectors demand. When you're talking about single-digit populations of a coin, you're operating in a realm where normal market principles don't really apply anymore. It becomes a matter of how much someone is willing to pay to own something.